So Israel adopts a controversial Jewish nation state law. Israel adopts a controversial Jewish nation state law. And apparently, in this, we see that all these law changing policies are not happening just here in America, they're happening in other places. All this, what we're experiencing here in America over issues surrounding people's background or their culture or race, is not happening just in America. It's happening all over. It's happening even in countries like Israel. And so here it goes on to say that they are trying to change their laws to reflect the dominant people who want to control Israel. And who is that? Here you can see this clip of, I guess there's a celebration, fireworks over Jerusalem. And this was April 18, 2018, at the start of the country's 70th annual Independence Day. On Thursday, adopt a law defining the country as the nation state of the Jewish people, provoking fears that it could lead to blatant discrimination against Arab citizens. So Arab lawmakers and Palestinians called the law racist and said it legalized apartheid following the tumultuous debate in parliament. So others said that it neglects to specify equality and Israel's democratic character, implying that the country's Jewish nature comes first. EU, the European Union, expressed concern and called for the rights of minorities to be respected. So the legislation adopted 62 votes to 55, makes Hebrew the country's national language, and defines the establishment of Jewish communities as being in the national interest. So Arabic, previously considered an official language, was granted only special status. The law passed in the early hours of Thursday speaks of Israel's as the historic homeland of the Jews and says they have a unique right to self-determination there, according to copies of the final text quoted by Israeli media. So, however, the deeply controversial clause that had been seen as more specifically legalizing the establishment of Jewish-only communities was changed after it drew criticism, including from President Reuven Rivlin. So the legislation becomes part of the country's basic laws, which serve as a de facto constitution. So it is our state, the Jewish state. But in recent years, some have tried to question that, as well as the principles of our existence and our rights. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said after the vote on legislation backed by right-wing governments. So he called its approval a decisive moment in Israeli history, the death of democracy. So a range of opposition politicians denounced the vote. The head of the mainly Arab Joint List Alliance, Ayman Odeh, call it the death of our democracy. So Arab parliament members who called the legislation racist ripped up copies of the bill in the chamber of Knesset, Israel's parliament, after it was passed. So it's a law that encourages not only discrimination, but racism as well. Lawmaker Yosef Jabarin He stated, so Arab citizens account for 17.5% of Israelis, more than 8 million population. They have long complained of discrimination. So Saeb Erekat, Secretary General of the Palestine Liberation Organization, called the legislation a dangerous and racist law that officially legalizes apartheid and legally defines Israel as an apartheid system. So Turkey said that the legislation trampled on universal law and the rights of Israeli Arabs. The sponsor of the law, Avid Ditcher, and it's a little more a challenge to pronounce. So Netanyahu Likud party has said it aims to defend Israel's status as a Jewish and democratic state. And so, but others pointed out that references to Jewish and democratic or Jewish democratic in earlier versions of the law had been removed, and that the law lacked references to equality as specified in the country's 1948 Declaration of Independence. The head of the respected Israel Democracy Institute think tank, Yohanan Plesner, called the law an unnecessary embarrassment to the country. The Institute's Shuki Friedman said much of the law is symbolic, but it would force the courts to consider the country's Jewish nature and lead to more narrow interpretation of Arabs' rights. So by emphasizing Israel's directly its democratic nature, Friedman told AFP, right wing or rightward shift. Various versions of the legislation have been debated for years. So Netanyahu's government, seen as the most right-wing in the country's history, had pushed for the law's approval before the parliament summer session ends. The legislation passed after a clause was changed that would have allowed the state to authorize a community composed of people having same faith and nationality to maintain the exclusive character of that community. So Rivlin, whose role as president is mainly symbolic, that had made a rare intervention in politics earlier this month to raise alarm over the clause. The legislation could harm the Jewish people worldwide and in Israel, and could even be used as a weapon by our enemies, he wrote in an open letter. Do we want to support the discrimination and exclusion of men and women based on their ethnic origin? And that is the question proposed. The passage of the law continues Israel's rightward shift in recent years amid frustrations with failed peace arguments with the Palestinians and steady growth in settlement building in the occupied West Bank. So Netanyahu has been in power since 2009 after having also served as premier between 1996 all the way through 1999, and a religious nationalist settlement advocates wield heavy influence in his current government. So Parliament's term expires November 2019, but there has been speculation that Netanyahu facing a use the passage of a law to boost his popularity with his base. And so it's not only happening in America that laws and changes are being made to reflect who is the dominant or hierarchy culture at top, or what they would say would be the ones in power, rather. It's also happening in Israel. And so there is fighting and culture fighting and race issues happening all over. You notice that? When as to before, it seemed like it was happening just in certain states and it was centralized. Now it seems like it has spread, it has evolved, and it is happening with not only just with issues surrounding race, it's also with other issues that have to do with, religion and with culture and with how people look, with how much money you make. And so it's happening everywhere. And it's just sad because it just doesn't seem like it really will end. It has actually grown into something a lot more complicated than people know. So, what are your thoughts and feedback on this? This comes out of the Yahoo, of course, but it's a Jean-Luc Renaudy, AFP. Um, and this is just but one of many situations that is going on, but this one is going on abroad, we'll say, in Israel. And so this has become an ongoing debate. And when laws can be passed to reflect the dominant culture, and so this is what is happening here, actually, right here in America, where they're changing things to reflect people that are perceived to be in power. Thoughts, comments, feedback on this subject? What do you think is happening everywhere? It just seems like it's never ending, and we're seeing it more and more now. Thanks for listening.